Hi guys, Togo here with a new video, and this video will be my should you main mage in World of Warcraft Dragonflight PvP. And I must say I'm super excited about those specs, a bit less about Frost, but Frost still works as a Frost mage. But I would say that Arcane and Fire really look great in PvP. I did play a lot of solo shuffle with those two specs, a bit less with Frost because I felt like Frost was still kind of the same spec. Although I think at level 70 it will be better because of a few combinations here and there. But let's talk about the class tree first. I must say that they really did a lot better than previously. I must say that having Dragon's Breath for Arcane and Frost as well is a great addition to their playstyle because always felt that Fire Mage has the easiest way to actually, like, I would say, polymorph a target, where an arcane mage that tries to cast polymorph, if they get kicked, it is pretty much GG's because you can't really do anything as an arcane mage if you're kicked on arcane. But with Dragon's Breath, it makes it a bit easier to, let's say, Dragon's Breath the DPS, polymorph the healer, and you're good to go. Or you can Dragon's Breath the healer, and then of course polymorph that said healer. So you have a lot of ways to actually play around. I like the addition of displacement back on the tree, so you can actually teleport and then you can just go back to where you were teleporting within the 8 seconds. So you have a lot of outplay potential. I would say that versus warriors or versus high mobility classes, it doesn't really matter too much, but it helps for those few seconds that your healer can have to actually heal you. It becomes also very hard to actually focus you. You can survive through mobility and not only through defensives or utility alone. So I'm very happy for that to come back. I think mages as a whole, they have a lot of great mobility options. So it does make a bit annoying to face, I would say, but as a mage player, I would say that you will have a lot of fun playing it. So at least someone is going to have fun with it. The amount of mobility you can have with Shimmer, with Displacement, with of course Alter Time and Master of Time, you will always have a blink available somehow, some way, and the only way that you are going to get stopped is because of a Dispeller on the other team, like purging your buffs away. Now let's talk about the class tree and the layout. You have the left side is pretty much about Frost, the middle side is pretty much about Arcane, and the right side a bit much about Arcane and Fire Mage. I think there is like a overlap, but it is not really a Fire Mage centric side, except at the end where you're going with Blast Wave, Dragon's Breath, and Meteor, which is also a great addition for, let's say, Arcane to do more damage while they are at it. So let's talk about the things that you are actually going to notice. You have slow for Arcane, Frost, and Fire Mage. So at least you have an instant slow ability that you can slow the enemies. I think there is still a mobility creep, so it doesn't really matter if you're slowed 15%. It is not 70%, but you can make it even stronger because of Frigid Winds, which also works for slow. You also get Ice Nova for all specs, which is something that you are going to maybe use it, but it is not like a mandatory spell. And freezing a target for 2 seconds is not really necessary to win games. But if you do need it for, let's say, a 1v1 situation, or you're doing a duel, or in BGs, I would say, why not take Ice Nova? But you will have to drop a few points here and there to make it work. You have also still Ring of Frost, which I'm not playing at the moment in solo shuffle because everyone is breaking CC, even polymorphs, and I feel like having Ring of Frost DRing everyone while people are actually actively breaking CC is a bit annoying. So I told myself to not take it. But I think at level 70 you will have a point to spare for Ring of Frost or Mass Polymorph. Mass Polymorph is also coming back, but I think there is no real indication to want to take that because I think Ring of Frost is just better. You have more easy access to CC and more controlled. You have, of course, mirror images coming back. You have somewhat, some way, the conduits back for like extra barriers or extra healing on barriers. So you have Tempest Barrier, you still have the Divert Energy, which is now a 2-pointer. So that's very good because it was a 3-pointer before and it was less accessible. You have Energized Barriers, which is quite nice because you do notice all those procs getting from people that are actually actively going for you. So your barrier receives melee attack, you get 10% chance to be granted clear casting or frost fingers or any other, like I think a fire blast proc, so you can actually do a fire blast or get a proc or a stack of fire blast. So you have ways to actually get your damage back up even whenever you are actually focused. You have blast wave, which is actually a super neat addition to the fire mage, frost mage, and arcane mage. Like fire mages were never going to take blast wave on the previous trees, but now with the talent trees it is a lot easier to take, it's more forgiving to take, and you're not going to do a lot of damage with it, but at least you will be able to kite more. You will have to see it as a typhoon or a thunderstorm, pushing people from ledges or trying to survive because of the push mechanic plus the slow. I think it's a great addition to the actual spec. I really like it, especially on Arcane and Frost, because again, if you're kicked on Frost or on Arcane, you will have to actually survive, and with blast wave and dragon's breath at your disposal you will be able to survive a lot more things that you might not survive from. Temporal velocity, which is a neat thing to have. For after casting blink you'll get 10%, and coming back from alter time you will get 40% movement speed, which is always neat. Flow of time still here to, and I think it will stay as a conduit now as a talent, and you will have the opportunity to get time anomaly as arcane, as frost, as fire. I don't know if it's going to be very handy as fire, because again you don't want to combust like all the time, you want to combust on specific times, so I don't know if you're going to gain a lot with that. And the same for actually frost, you don't really want to have um, icy veins like for nothing, because if you're casting polymorph, icy veins is quite neat, but it's a wasted icy veins, right? So I don't know, it is going to be good, but I don't know if it's going to be very meta in PvP. I might maybe like freezing cold, but I need to test a lot around it to actually see if it's going to be interesting or not. And shifting power, again, it's a bit hard to get because you will have to spend 2 points in frigid winds, 1 point in ice ward, and then 1 point in shifting power. But there is a possibility to go there if you really desire. Now let's talk about the arcane mage tree, and I must say I'm actually surprised on how they are actually laying out the trees. I know that some PvEers are really don't not really liking Radiant Spark and Harmonic Echo to be coming back, but in PvP it is an interesting addition. I don't know if I'm going to play with Radiant Spark because maybe I want to have the left side Enlightenment, Prodigious Savant, and also Orb Barrage, because it's always nice to have an arcane orb flying towards people for free. But the only thing that I know is I like to play with Arcane Bombardment, which is a finisher, so making your Arcane Barrage actually hit like a truck, and having the Arcane Harmony stack. So you can stack it up, you will have 100% more damage on Arcane Barrage, and then you will have 100% increased damage on below 35% health on the enemy target, so you can theoretically get 200% more damage on Arcane Barrage, which is pretty much a finisher if it crits, because if it crits you can just add 1.5 I think 1.75 multiplier to it, and then you will just do too much damage to actually survive that amount of damage. I like, so the right side is more about clear casting, more about arcane missiles, and the left side is more about, I don't know, it's more about like the arcane charges, hastes, a bit of arcane barrage here and there, but more or less the mana regen. So like evocation, siphon storm, which is a legendary that you had, prodigious savant, and of course those orbs. But I think The one thing I see that is going to always happen in PvP is we are going to go for Arcane Missiles and Arcane Barrage because that's the most reliable amounts of damage you can actually have. I know that Arcane Blast can do a lot of damage if it's stacked and you are like aligning your Touch of the Magi, which is not instant by the way, so it's very, very good to have. And Arcane Surge, which is a new ability, at least for Dragonflight, and does a lot of damage. It will do up to 10.5k arcane damage based on mana spent. Of course, whenever if it crits for a lot, and you get also a spell damage modifier for 15 seconds. So you get actually arcane power to your actual arcane surge. So your arcane surge is your damage proportion, and arcane power is your buff proportion after you have casted arcane surge. So your play would be Touch of the Magi into a arcane surge into, let's say, a clear casted arcane missiles maybe 2 times, and then you can just do presence of mind, arcane blast, and then arcane barrage if you have the stacks or if they are low HP. So you have a lot of great things going on, and then Touch of the Magi will blow up to do insane amounts of damages if you're actually lining up your CDs and your arcane surge correctly. It does insane damage. Arcane is still going to be insane. I think the PvP talents are there to actually help you. You can play with Ice Wall. Again, CC, although it's not hard CC, it is a soft kind of CC. You can block the line of sight of the healer, or you can make it annoying to run away. So it's something that is going to help you maybe instead of precognition, or you can also play with Ring of Fire to actually have consistent amounts of damages outside of Arcane. You can then just do Ring of Fire to do more damage. And in general, all precognition is probably one of those talents that are going to be very valuable for Arcane because you're casting a lot. If you can fake cast, you get a 15% haste and becoming immune to CC and interrupts for 4 seconds. So it's something still very nice to have, and it is going to be noticeable in a match where if you are going to do a lot of fake casting and it works, you're going to have a great time to actually cast spells. Arcanosphere is still there, so you can also do Touch of the Magi, Arcanosphere. What you can do is Touch of the Magi, Arcane Surge into Arcanosphere, and someone is going to die. But the thing is, you will have to cast a lot. I don't know if you're going to have a lot of time to cast. What you can do though is Arcanosphere into Touch of the Magi. So you charge your Arcanosphere, he's polymorphed. The Arcanosphere is moving towards the enemy. Your Touch of the Magi is instant, so you put it before it gets touched, and then you can do an Arcanosphere, and then you're going to do insane amount of damage without them being able to react on it. So you have some possibilities to play around. I think Arcane Mage is really fun to play. People will like to play it. I don't know if it's going to be meta, but the design at least is becoming better than Shadowlands. I'm going to give 100% a approval stamp towards that spec. Now, should you main Arcane Mage? Well, if you always liked the Arcane playstyle and you always liked to be the third spec of the mages, so pretty much the little brother, I would say, from all those specs, and being able to be like a shining spec where you're going to do a lot of damage, people are going to be actually mind blown if you're left alone. You should play Arcane. Arcane is such a great spec. I think it's very fun to play. I don't know if it's going to be very meta. Again, depending on numbers, depending on how the meta will shape, I think Arcane will be better than Shadowlands. I think Arcane is probably stepping out of that D tier category for 3s and 2s, and Solo Shuffle is probably one of those modes where you're going to shine. I think the lack of communication helps Arcane immensely, and in solo queue where everything goes, I think Arcane mages can do some serious amounts of damages if you're able to do some good one-shot combinations. Now, let's talk about fire. I think fire is actually on fire. Sorry for this wordplay. I'm going to hang myself. um, and really it's an insane good spec. I think stepping away from that combust go shit, I think it's going to be very good for that spec. Again, I think combust, the combust playstyle is still going to be the main playstyle, where you will have amounts of damages that are going to be consistent but bursty. So you know, whenever you're popping combust, you'll have a specific amount of time to do your combust. You're going to do a lot of damage with it. But what I like to do, of course, I don't know if it's in social fall going to be very viable, but for now I did some great hits. You can play with Pyroclasm, and Pyroclasm is one of those ability buffs. Whenever it procs, you are able to do pyroblast casts, you're doing insane amount of damage, because you can stack 2 times. You can do pyroblast casting, you send it, do another pyroblast, you get a crit, you do another pyroblast, you get a combust via Sun King's blessings, because that's all combined. After consuming 8 hot streaks, your next non-instant pyroblast cast within 15 seconds grants you combust for 6 seconds. So you will still have that combust going on, and then you have your combustion ready to go for 5 seconds if you are like needing that extra oomph after those 6 seconds. So it will be more cost heavy, but I think by itself it is a fantastic spec design. I would say design wise, I'm very happy for the direction they're going. You will be able to actually mix and match everything to make your playstyle as perfect as possible. Will this particle build actually be viable? I don't know. I think the normal build, where you're playing with improved combustion, is still going to be the way to go, where you have a longer combust, where you have a 15% increased mastery, mastery equal to 50% of your critical strike stat. So you will have more mastery, more ignite damage. You will not like sacrifice your combust for a faster pyroblast cast. But I think if you have a higher haste stat, you really can make your pyroblast like be super nasty. Like a 2.4 second cast isn't that long. It feels long whenever you're trained, but if you're playing with another cast, so let's say a boomy, so you can still revive a spicy chicken cleave, or you're playing with a warlock, like let's say a destruction warlock, I think that playstyle might be the way, because I remember still the people that are actually playing with greater pyroblast. And I think by itself, with this build, you can play with precognition, so you have a lot of cast abilities. You can fake cast a bit, you get 15% haste, so which is basically a mini lust, and you're going to do insane amounts of damages if you're like having a bit of time to cast. And just by itself, it is a fantastic way to play the game. So now let's talk about a few things that are coming back, or at least reinforcing the spec fantasy. You still have Phoenix Flames, you still have Fire Blast, you still have a lot of ways to actually improve that Fire Blast. Your Scorch can be improved with Searing Touch. I think you will have to go for Searing Touch anyways. You can also go for improved Scorch, so casting on Scorch on targets below 30% health will increase the amount of damage they take by you, so you can actually prepare some insane damage as well. But I think it's more for PvE this. To get like 6% more damage. It is noticeable in PvE. In PvP, it's a bit hard to notice it. And you get also, whenever you are critical striking with Scorch, you get a 30% increased movement speed. I don't know how, maybe more? No, it's only 30%, which is not that great, to be honest. Um, and I like the playstyle, which the one that I'm actually highlighting. So you have a lot more like hot streaks because of Dragon's Breath, and also Phoenix Flames always critical strike, so that's also very fun to play around. You also have Living Bomb still there, although the damage is not really great. It is good to actually put it on stealthies, just in general. I really wish it became a bit more of an interesting spell, at least damage wise, but it isn't the case. But they might still change it, maybe some way somehow. But Mythic Plus kind of limits Living Bomb to be the monster Living Bomb it was in Wrath of the Lich King, for example. You still have like a lot of dot gameplay, but you can also play with Firefall. So basically, fireballs and Pyroblast causes your next fireball to call down a meteor on your target, and that's also very nice too if you want to do some burst. But the thing is, you can control it, but you also cannot control it. Sometimes you just do a Pyroblast or a Fireball too much, and the meteor will just do no damage. You have also hyperthermia, although I think it is not worth it because the chance on is very low. So whenever you are activating hot streak, you get a chance to cause all Pyroblasts to have no cast time and be guaranteed critical strikes. It is alright, but the chance on is very low. So I don't know if it's going to be very good or very viable to play around that talent. Maybe in PvE where you can do just damage and damage only, and you will have a weak aura saying you that you have hyperthermia, so you can actually spam Pyroblast. But I don't think it's going to be very good in PvP. You also have sometimes improving your ignite damage. You can play around that if you really so desire. You have Fiery Rush, so that's a 4 set. That's also a possibility, although to be honest, you don't really need that to be very strong in PvP. And you also have Flame Accelerant, again, doing more damage with your fireball and having reduced cast time. It is a way where you can actually have reliable amounts of hot streaks with a lot of talents like, let's say, Firestarter, and you have also critical mass, again, more crit, so you will have a lot more hot streaks going on than previously. Just in general, I think you're going to have a great time if you are a fire mage main. I think Shadowlands fire mage wasn't really the most fun spec you had in PvP because it was very monotone, where you are actually actively watching for CC, and then once the enemies are CC, you do your combats go with a mage, with a rogue. But now with this spec, you really can play caster cleaves with a fire mage. I think I'm really leaning towards fire mages. I think casters in general are really fantastic in Dragonflight, guys. And that's just a fact. I think it is going to be very fun to play in PvP. Caster cleaves are still going to be very, very strong. I think not as strong as Season 3 Shadowlands, but you will still have possibilities to be as strong as that, because you still have precognition, and precognition is such a great spell to have. You could also play glass cannon, which makes your fireball hit a bit more, and you can do like a sort of fireball spec where your fireball actually does like alright damage to actually be worthwhile to cast. But with this spec, with this talent, I would say the layout of those talents just asks to actually spam Pyroblast. If you cannot spam Pyroblast, then you do a Fireball, but pretty much you only lose 0.7 seconds on a cast, so you don't really need to Fireball. I think Fireball is quite nice to start with a crit, let's say whenever they are above 90% health, but whenever you have time to actually have Pyroclasm and Sun King's Blessing, I think it's always nice to have a Pyroblast just in general to do insane amount of damages. I think doing a Pyroblast and doing 35k damage critical with this build is actually super satisfying, because it is basically playing with a greater Pyroblast, but it does give you hot streak, so you can still continue the assault, while greater Pyroblast, it is something, it does very good damage, but you cannot really build from that, except if you have like a combust. So I really like this playstyle, and should you main Fire Mage, I think you should definitely main Fire Mage if you are actually looking for a caster. I think if you're looking for a traditional caster, Fire Mages can give you that. If you're looking for a setup caster like previous in Shadowlands, it is still there. So you have those two playstyles, setup-y or more caster heavy playstyles, which is fantastic to have, because then you have more choices. And if you like that fire mage more explosive way of playing the game, I think you're going to actually enjoy fire mages. Like myself, I'm still a warlock main, but now I'm like looking for alts where if I'm like more into other things, like let's say mages, I would then play fire mage, because fire mage is such a fantastic spec, especially this one. If you are able to play a caster cleave, you're going to enjoy your time. I think this spec is a bit less interesting in solo shuffle because you will have times where you're going to get trained by two melees, and even maybe the healer is going to train you in like in plain sight. But I think there is always a way where you can make it work. But I think the combust go where you are going to do setups is still alive, so you can also play that style versus melees, for example. So should you main fire mage? Definitely you should main fire mage. I think it's always also going to be fun for PvE. So if you are a PvEer, be sure to test fire mage. You're going to actually enjoy it with this design and build. All right, let's talk about frost mages, and I think it is going to be very controversial. I think it is fine how it is. I just think they need to change a few things. You should not take this build. This build is not the best. I would definitely go for more of an icy veins build, where you're going for, let's say, more about ice lands. Now I need to look for the few talents that I'm actually looking for to do those Icelands builds. So I think you're going for. I want to show you guys. So you go for Flash Freeze, you go for Splintering Cold. It's going to be very annoying to make it work, huh? But Splitting Ice, and then you would put those 2 points to improve your Icelands build. So you will go for Icy Propulsions, and you will go for Chain Reaction. But you will miss a few things. I think you will need to sacrifice this one to get Thermal Void. But I think you already see the point what I'm making, right? You have not enough points at level 60 to actually make a great spec out of Frost. That's why people are actually complaining about Frost these days, because it just feels like Shadowlands, where you will have to play Frostbolt and still Necrolord, I guess, to make it work, because then you can just like play the good old Frost Mage spec. I think it's going to be better at level 70 because you have Dragon's Breath, you will have shifting power because it's easy to get as a frost mage. You can go for frigid winds, ice ward, and then shifting power, and you will have a lot of great tools at your disposal, and even have a points for greater invisibility, which is still something nice to have. But I think in general, nothing really changes. I don't think you get something added to the spec. I think you even lose a few things. Like for example, Comet Storm is not as easy to get these days anymore. I think Frozen Orb might be the trick. I think you will have to play around Frozen Orb, Frost Bomb, and Snowdrift to actually make a lot of your damage worthwhile. You will have to play Icelands IMO because they did nerf Frostbolt. Now you don't have the PvP talent that improves your Frostbolt. You only have Ice Form, which is still something good, but it is dispellable. So it's very risky to play versus shamans or priests with ice form, even versus, let's say, other mages where they can just steal that. Deep Shatter is now only 40%, while as a PvP talent it was 75%. I don't know. I feel like they need to tune it to a way where it's worthwhile to go for other builds. I think the choice that you have to make between Frost, Bolt, and Icelands is not really interesting. I think the only interesting spec design that I would like to play as a Frost Mage is actually the Orb build. So you play with Frozen Orb, you play with Cold Front, you play with Frost Bomb, you play with Snow Drift, and probably Ice Wall to actually like stop the people from coming, or you just remove Snowdrift and you go for concentrated coolness for more damage on Frozen Orb, but also to be able to control that Frozen Orb to do maximum amounts of damages. But again, it just feels like it is not as impressive as the other classes. They just need a few things to actually make it enjoyable. I don't think deep freeze is something that is going to come back, because in this current game you cannot have deep freeze as a frost mage because you have still a lot of CC at your disposal, especially now with Dragon's Breath. But you also have Ring of Frost, you also have, if you want to have mass polymorph, you get it. You also have Blast Wave, which is a knockback, which is super great actually for frost mages. but I think they just lack a few things to actually make it fun. Um, I don't know, guys. I don't know. Maybe you should tell me what is good about frost mages these days. I think you will, and you are actually inclined to go for a frozen orb build or for a frostbolt build, which does less damage than before. Or you could play like an Iceland's build, where still with Lonely Winter you will do a lot of damage, and I think it's fun. I think you are going to have fun as Frost Mage, but it's so disappointing comparing to other specs. If you compare Frost Mages with, let's say, Elemental Shamans, or even all the Warlock specs, or even their brothers like Fire and Arcane, I feel like Frost Mages they don't know what to do with it, and that's the main problem I see from Frost Mages. Um, I'm going to respond right away. Should you main Frost Mages in Dragonflight? I think it is not main worthy. I think you are going to play Frost if you are maining Mage. If you're a Fire Mage main or Arcane Mage main, sometimes you will dip your toes into Frost, but you will quickly go back to Arcane or Fire. Except if you are a die-hard Frost and you only play Frost Mage because you like Frost Mage and the overall design and the overall feeling of the class, then you do you. But I think if you are looking for a new main and you don't know who or what, I would suggest to look up for other casters if you're looking for a caster. If you are in love with the Frost Mage build, like Icelands or Frostbolt or Frozen Orb, then you can do whatever you want. You can just play Frost Mage and you will enjoy your time. But me personally, if I have to give an advice to a friend, like a friend is going to ask me, look, I'm looking for a caster, what should I main? I'm looking for Frost Mage maybe, but I don't know if it's going to be any good. I'm going to say Frost Mages, they are still the same as Shadowlands. I would even say arguably PFA. So I don't even know if it's going to be very worthwhile to play. Um, I would suggest to not main this spec. Um, but I'm going to talk about a few things here. You have some good things in that spec, right? Because I'm overly negative, but Flurry is now, of course, always instant. It will always give Winter's Chill, so there is no proc. Your Brain Freezes will give you procs of Flurry and does also more damage for Flurry, so it's good. So Flurry is great now. Flurry is also controllable. You have 2 stacks. You can do whatever you want, and you will do whatever you want. That's a good thing. So you will have Flurry to always have a reliability on your burst. So if you want to do burst, you do Flurry. You get some frost bolts of ice bolts, ice lands, and you will do damage. And if you get a brain freeze stack, you will just expand that brain freeze to do more damage on your flurry. But also with that flurry effect, you will get Winter's Chill, which does more damage towards frozen. I would say characters where you will do more damage with Ice Lance and Frostbolt. So you will have a gameplay loop where you are going to be active, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to actually save that spec. And I think Frost Mages and Retribution Paladins, and I would say Paladins as a whole, they are really good contenders for mid-season rework. So I think mid-season, I would say 10.0.5 or 10.1, you will get a rework of Frost or the Paladin specs to get it a bit more interesting, like design-wise. I think they are top contenders. Maybe also Marksmanship Hunter, although Marksmanship Hunter is fun to play. I can understand why people are actually complaining like it's still the same as in Shadowlands. It is actually the same as Shadowlands, but I think Shadowlands Marksmanship Hunter is actually not changed, but the design was still alright, so it's not bad. It's just not changed. While Frost Mages, I think every Frost Mage main actually is telling that the design from Shadowlands was not really fun. Like pressing only Frostbolt and only Frostbolt only to do more damage is not really very fun. So I don't know, maybe they should do something with Glacial Spike being a bit higher on the tree, or put Comet Storm a bit more centered, where your Comet Storm will be centered around the spec, so you will do more damage with Comet Storm, and having the 30-second CD is not like obnoxious, so you're not going to spam Comet Storms. I think that could be also fun. Or Frozen Orb be a bit more skillful, so I would say a 30-second CD maybe. and you can already like that PvP talent is implemented directly, for example, or you can put it in the talent tree so you have more choices. Like you have a lot of things that you can do to make it good without impacting the overall power of Frost Mage, because I don't think the power is bad, I just think the design is not that fun. But I think Frost Mages, you can perform and you will perform as Frost Mage in Dragonflight because numbers are numbers. But I think design wise, it's probably the same as Shadowlands, if not worse, because you do lose a few things. Although you win some with Blast Wave, Alter Time, Master of Time, and Dragon's Breath and Displacement. So you have a lot more mobility, but I think the damaging rotation will be kind of the same. PvP talents, I think that's more exciting. You have Frostbomb that actually does a lot of damage, but is it enough to play a whole spec with just one PvP talent? Because that's basically it. You're saying that your fun is revolving around one PvP talent, which is Frostbomb, which could be fun, but is also dispellable. And I don't know. I need to see how it's going to be in Dragonflight to actually give a 100% no or 100% yes. But for me right now, if you're suggesting to play Frost Mage, I would say no, thank you. So, what do you think about this video? Please comment below what you think about mages, fire mage, arcane mage, and frost mage. Am I right? Am I not right? Please let me know. Please, thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate you. Thank you for watching all those videos. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking. And thank you for being here. We are going to do those last two specs, which are monks and demon hunters. And I will do evoker once I have levels mine in the pre-patch event. Whenever it comes out, I'm going to make a should you main evoker video. And yeah, I look forward to it, and I look forward to actually play evoker and see if it's going to be very fun or not. So thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate you. Again, be safe, and we will catch each other very soon with a next video. The next video will be monks. Thank you. Bye.